Good evening, and welcome to Footnotes Folly. I am Professor Reginald St. John Pemberton, and tonight we open the 7th book of Herodotus of Halicarnassus, the book the ancients called Polymnia, and the heart of the whole history. We carry on in plain modern English, from the first line, with nothing left out, still using Macaulay's public domain translation. The plain rendering, and the muttering, are my own. This is part 35. Darius dies before he can avenge Marathon, and his son Xerxes takes the throne of the world. At first he is reluctant, then his cousin Mardonius talks him into war. He half changes his mind, and a phantom in a dream terrifies him and Artabanus too into going. And so begins the greatest war preparation the world had ever seen. 4 years of it, a canal cut clean through a mountain at Athos, and depots of food laid out across 2 continents. Let us begin.
When the report of the battle fought at Marathon reached Darius, son of Histastes, the king was already deeply angry with the Athenians because of their attack on Sardis. After this news he showed far greater anger than before, and he became much more eager to march against Hellas. He immediately sent messengers to the various cities and ordered them to prepare forces. From each people he demanded far more than he had demanded the previous time, not only warships but also horses, supplies, and transport vessels. When these commands had been carried around, all Asia was stirred for 3 years, because the best men everywhere were being enrolled for the expedition against Hellas and were making preparations. But in the 4th year the Egyptians, who had been made subject by Cambyses, revolted from the Persians, and then Darius was even more eager to march against both nations. While Darius was preparing to set out against Egypt and against Athens, a serious quarrel arose among his sons over the royal power. They said that, according to the custom of the Persians, he must not go on his expeditions until he had named one of them king. Before Darius became king, 3 sons had already been born to him by his former wife, the daughter of Gobryas. After he became king, 4 other sons were born to him by Atessa, daughter of Cyrus. The eldest of the first group was Artabanus, and the eldest of those born later was Xerxes. Since these sons did not have the same mother, they disputed with one another. Artabanus argued that he was the oldest of all the sons, and that it was the custom among all peoples for the eldest to rule. Xerxes argued that he was the son of Atessa, daughter of Cyrus, and that Cyrus was the man who had won freedom for the Persians. Before Darius had declared his decision, it happened that Demaratus, son of Ariston, had also come up to Susa at the same time. He had been deprived of the kingship in Sparta, and had imposed exile from Lacedaemon upon himself. This man, hearing of the dispute between the sons of Darius, came, as the story is told, and advised Xerxes to add another argument to those he was already making, that he had been born to Darius when Darius was already reigning as king and held supreme power over the Persians, whereas Artabanus had been born while Darius was still a private man. Therefore, he should say, it was neither fitting nor just that another should receive the honor before him. Demaratus suggested that even in Sparta this was the custom. If some sons were born before their father began to reign, and another son was born later while the father was reigning, then the succession to the kingship belonged to the one born later. Xerxes used the suggestion of Demaratus, and Darius, seeing that he spoke what was just, appointed him king. Yet my own opinion is that Xerxes would have become king even without this suggestion, because Atessa had complete power. After Darius had appointed Xerxes king over the Persians, he wished to proceed with his expeditions. But in the next year after this appointment and after the revolt of Egypt, Darius himself died, having reigned in all for 36 years. So he did not succeed in taking vengeance either on the revolted Egyptians or on the Athenians. When Darius was dead, the kingdom passed to his son Xerxes. At first Xerxes was by no means eager to march against Hellas, but he continued gathering a force against Egypt. Mardonius, son of Gobryas, was always at his side. He was a cousin of Xerxes, the son of Darius's sister, and he had more influence with Xerxes than any other Persian. He continually spoke to him in this way. Master, it is not right that the Athenians, after doing very great harm to the Persians, should not pay the penalty for what they have done. Suppose that for the present you do what is already in your hands to do. Then, when you have subdued the land of Egypt, which has insolently broken away from us, march an army against Athens, so that men may give you a good name, and so that in the future everyone may beware of making expeditions against your land. So far his speech concerned vengeance. To this he would add that Europe was a very beautiful land, that it bore every kind of cultivated fruit tree, that it was excellently fertile, and that among all mortals the king alone was worthy to possess it. He used to say these things because he desired dangerous enterprises, and wished to become governor of Hellas himself under the king. In time he prevailed on Xerxes and persuaded him to undertake the expedition, for other matters also helped him and aided him in persuading Xerxes. First, messengers had come from Thessaly, sent by the Eleudai, inviting the king to come against Hellas and showing great zeal for his cause. These Eleudai were kings of Thessaly. Second, the sons of Pisistratos who had come up to Susa also urged him on, using the same arguments as the Eleudai. Besides this, they offered him still another inducement. There was an Athenian named Onomachritos, who uttered oracles, and had also collected and arranged the oracles of Museus. The sons of Pisistratos had come up with this man after first being reconciled with him from their former enmity. Onomachritos had been driven out of Athens by Hipparchos, son of Pisistratos, after Lassos of Hermion caught him inserting into the works of Musaeus an oracle saying that the islands lying off Lemnos would disappear under the sea. For that reason Hipparchos drove him out, though before then he had often consulted him. Now Onomachritos had gone up with the sons of Pisistratos, and when he came into the presence of the king, the sons of Pisistratos spoke of him in splendid terms, and he recited some of the oracles. If any of them predicted disaster for the barbarians, he said nothing of it. Instead, he chose the most favorable passages and told how it was fated that the Hellespont should be yoked with a bridge by a Persian, and he described the manner of the march. Thus Onomachritos urged Xerxes on with oracles, while the sons of Pisistratos and the Eleudai pressed him with their advice. After Xerxes had been persuaded to make an expedition against Hellas, in the year after the death of Darius he first marched against those who had revolted. He subdued them and reduced all Egypt to a slavery much harsher than it had suffered in the reign of Darius. Then he entrusted the government of Egypt to Achaemenes, his own brother, a son of Darius. This Achaemenes, while governor of Egypt, was later killed by Inaros, son of Psamatichos, a Libyan. After the conquest of Egypt, when Xerxes was about to take up the expedition against Athens, he summoned a chosen assembly of the best men among the Persians. He did this both to learn their opinions, and to declare before them all what he intended to do. When they had assembled, Xerxes spoke to them as follows. Persians, I shall not be the first to establish this custom among you. I received it from others, and I shall follow it. For as I am told by those older than I am, we have never yet remained at rest since we received the supremacy from the Medes, when Cyrus overthrew Astyages. God leads us in this way, and it turns out well for us that we are occupied with many enterprises. There is no need for me to speak about the nations that Cyrus, Cambyses, and my father Darius subdued and added to our possessions, since you know them well. As for me, from the day when I inherited this throne on which I sit, I have always carefully considered how, in this honorable position, I might not fall short of those who came before me, nor add less power to the dominion of the Persians. After careful thought, I find a way by which we may win glory, together with a land no smaller and no worse than the one we now possess, and indeed more varied in what it produces, while also bringing about vengeance and repayment. For this reason I have now assembled you, so that I may tell you what I have in mind to do. I intend to yoke the Hellespont with a bridge and march an army through Europe against Hellas, so that I may take vengeance on the Athenians for all the things they have done both to the Persians and to my father. You saw how my father Darius also meant to make an expedition against these men, but he has ended his life and did not succeed in taking vengeance on them. I, however, on his behalf and on behalf of the other Persians, will not stop until I have conquered Athens and burned it with fire, since they did wrong unprovoked to me and to my father. First they came to Sardis with Aristogoras the Milesian, our slave, and set fire to the sacred groves and the temples. Second, you all know well, I think, what they did to us when we disembarked in their land at the time when Darius and Artabanus commanded our army. For these reasons I have resolved to make an expedition against them, and when I reckon the matter up, I find in it the many good things you shall hear. If we subdue them and their neighbors, who dwell in the land of Pelops the Phrygian, we shall make the Persian land have the same boundaries as the heaven of Zeus. In truth, the sun will look down on no land that borders ours. With your help I shall make all lands into one land, after passing through the whole of Europe. For I am informed that this is how things stand. There is no city of men and no race of human beings left that will be able to come into conflict with us once those whom I have just mentioned have been removed from our path. Thus both those who have wronged us, and those who have not wronged us will bear the yoke of slavery. You will please me best if you do this. Whenever I tell you the time at which you must come, each of you must appear with zeal for the service. Whoever comes with the best equipped force, to him I will give gifts such as are counted most honorable in our land. These things must be done. But so that I may not seem to you to be following only my own counsel, I set the matter before you for discussion, and I invite any one of you who wishes to declare his opinion. Master, you surpass not only every Persian who came before you, but also every one who will come after you. In all that you have said, you have reached what is best and truest in every other matter, and you will also not allow the Ionians who live in Europe to laugh at us, though they have no right to do so. It would be a strange thing if we have conquered and made servants of Saccans, Indians, Ethiopians, Assyrians, and many other great nations, even though they had done no wrong to the Persians, simply because we wished to add them to our dominion, and yet we should not take revenge on the Hellenes, who wronged us without provocation. What should we be afraid of? What number of men gathering against us, or what supply of money? We know their way of fighting, and we know that their resources are weak. Besides, we have already subdued their sons, those who are settled in our land and are called Ionians, Aeolians, and Dorians. I myself once tested what it was like to march against these men, when your father commanded me to do so. I marched as far as Macedonia, and came only a little short of reaching Athens itself, yet no man came out to oppose me in battle. It is true that the Hellenes make war, but as I am told, they do it with very little sense, because of stubbornness and lack of skill. When they have declared war on one another, they first find the fairest and smoothest piece of ground, and then they go down to that place and fight. The result is that even the victors leave the battle with heavy losses. As for the defeated, I do not even speak of them, since they are utterly destroyed. Since they are men who speak the same language, they ought to use heralds and messengers, and settle their disputes in any way rather than by battles. If they absolutely must fight one another, each side ought to find the place where it is hardest to overcome, and there make its trial. Because the Hellenes used no good method, when I had marched as far as the land of Macedonia, they never brought themselves to the point of fighting me. Who, then, is likely to stand against you, O king, and offer battle, when you are leading all the multitudes of Asia, and the whole number of the ships? For my part, I do not think the power of the Hellenes has reached such a height of boldness. But if I should, after all, be mistaken in my judgment, and if they are stirred by reckless folly and come to battle with us, then they will learn that we are the best of all men in the business of war. In any case, let nothing be left untried. Nothing comes of itself. All things usually come to men through trial. With these words Mardonius smoothed over the decision Xerxes had expressed, and then he stopped speaking. The other Persians were silent, and did not dare to declare any opinion contrary to what had been proposed. Then Artabanus, the son of Hystaspes, who was the brother of Xerxes' father and trusted in that relationship, spoke as follows. O king, if opposing opinions are not spoken, it is impossible to choose the better one. A man must simply accept the one that has been stated. But when opposite opinions are expressed, then such a choice is possible. It is like gold. We do not distinguish gold free from alloy when it is by itself, but when we rub it on the touchstone and compare it with other gold, then we recognize which is better. I also gave advice to your father Darius, my brother, not to march against the Scythians, men who possess no settled city anywhere on earth. He, however, expected to subdue the Scythians, though they were nomads, and he would not listen to me. He made the march and came back from it after losing many good men from his army. But you, O king, intend to march against men who are much better than the Scythians, men who are reported to be excellent both by sea and on land. It is right that I should tell you what danger is to be feared in this matter. You say that you will yoke the Hellespont with a bridge and march an army through Europe against Hellas. Now suppose that we happen to be defeated either on land or at sea, or even in both places, for these men are said to be valiant in fight, and we can judge for ourselves that this is true, since the Athenians alone destroyed the great army which came with Darius and Artabanus into the Attic land. Suppose, then, that they do not succeed in both places, but instead attack with their ships, win a sea battle, sail to the Hellespont, and break up the bridge. That alone, O king, will prove to be a great peril. I do not guess this through any native wisdom of my own. I am only imagining a misfortune like the one that almost overtook us before, when your father had yoked the Bosphorus of Thracia and made a bridge over the river Ister, and had crossed over to go against the Scythians. At that time the Scythians used every kind of entreaty to persuade the Ionians, who had been entrusted with guarding the bridges over the Ister, to break up the crossing. If Histios, the despot of Mutos, had followed the opinion of the other despots then, and had not opposed them, the power of the Persians would have been brought to an end. Yet it is a fearful thing even to hear it said that the whole power of the king came to depend on one human being. Therefore do not choose to enter into any such danger when there is no need. Instead, do as I say. For the present, dismiss this assembly. Later, whenever it seems good to you, consider the matter prudently by yourself and proclaim whatever seems best to you. I hold good counsel to be a very great gain. Even if something turns out badly, the counsel that was taken is no less good, though it has been defeated by fortune. But the man who took bad counsel at first, if good fortune attends him, has stumbled upon a prize by chance, and his counsel was no less bad for that. You see how God strikes with thunderbolts the creatures that rise above the rest, and does not allow them to make a proud display, while the small ones do not provoke his jealousy. You see also how he always hurls his darts at the highest buildings and the tallest trees, for God is accustomed to cut short all things that stand out above the rest. In the same way, a great army is sometimes destroyed by a small one. When God becomes jealous of it and casts panic or thunder from heaven upon it, then it is utterly destroyed, not as its worth deserves. For God allows no one but himself to have high thoughts. Moreover, haste in any matter breeds disasters, from which great losses usually arise. But in waiting there are many good things contained, and even if they do not appear good at first, in time one will find that they are so. To you, O king, I give this counsel. But you, Mardonius, son of Galbrius, stop speaking foolish words about the Hellenes, for they in no way deserve to be spoken of with contempt. By slandering the Hellenes, you are stirring up the king himself to make an expedition, and I think that this is the very end toward which you are straining every effort. Do not let this happen. Slander is a most grievous thing. In it there are two wrongdoers, and one person who suffers wrong. The slanderer does wrong because he speaks against someone who is not present. The other does wrong because he is persuaded of the charge before he has certain knowledge of it. The man who is absent when the words are spoken suffers wrong in this way. He has been slandered by one man, and has been believed bad by the other. However, if it is absolutely necessary to make an expedition against these men, come, let the king himself remain behind in the dwellings of the Persians, and let the two of us stake our sons as the wager. Then lead an army yourself, choosing whatever men you desire and taking an army as large as you think good. If matters turn out for the king as you say, let my sons be killed, and let me be killed in addition to them. But if they turn out as I predict, let your sons suffer this, and you with them, if you return alive. But if you are not willing to undergo this test, and are determined by all means to lead an army against Hellas, then I say that those left behind in this land will hear that Mardonius, after doing great harm to the Persians, has been torn by dogs and birds, either in the land of the Athenians, or perhaps in the land of the Lacedaemonians, unless this has already happened somewhere on the way, and that you have at last learned what kind of men you are persuading the king to march against. Artabanus, you are my father's brother, and that will save you from receiving the repayment your foolish words deserve. Yet I lay this dishonor on you, since you are cowardly and spiritless. You shall not march with me against Hellas, but shall remain here with the women. I, even without your help, will accomplish everything I have said. May I not be descended from Darius, son of Hystaspes, son of Arsames, son of Ariramnes, son of Taspes, nor from Cyrus, son of Cambyses, son of Taspes, son of the Chamenes, if I do not take vengeance on the Athenians. I know well that if we remain quiet, they will not. They will again march against our land, if we may judge by the deeds they began with, since they both set fire to Sardis and marched upon Asia. It is therefore impossible for either side to withdraw from the quarrel. The question before us is whether we shall act or suffer, whether all these regions shall come under the Hellenes or all those regions under the Persians. In our hostility there is no middle course. It follows, then, that now it is right for us, having first suffered wrong, to take revenge, so that I may also discover what this terrible thing is that I shall suffer if I lead an army against these men whom Pelops the Phrygian, who was the slave of my forefathers, so thoroughly subdued that even to the present day both the men themselves and their land are called by the name of the one who subdued them. So the matter was spoken of up to that point. But afterward, when darkness came on, the opinion of Artabanus kept tormenting Xerxes. He made the night his counselor, and found that it was by no means to his advantage to make the march against Hellas. After forming this new resolution, he fell asleep. In the night, as the Persians report, he saw the following vision. Xerxes thought that a tall and handsome man came and stood beside him and said, "Are you really changing your plan, O Persian, to lead an expedition against Hellas, now that you have proclaimed that the Persians are to gather an army? You do not do well to change your plan, and the one who is here with you will not excuse you from it. Go on the way that you resolved during the day to take." After saying this, Xerxes thought the speaker flew away. When day dawned, he paid no attention to this dream, but gathered together the Persians whom he had also assembled before and spoke these words to them. "Persians, forgive me for making quick changes in my judgment. I have not yet come to my prime in wisdom, and those who advise me to do what I said do not leave me to myself for any length of time. When I first heard the opinion of Artabanus, my youthful impulses burst out, so that I cast improper words at a man older than myself. But now I acknowledge that he is right, and I shall follow his opinion. Understand, then, that I have changed my decision to march against Hellas, and you are to remain still." When the Persians heard this, they were delighted and made obeisance. But when night came, the same dream again came and stood beside Xerxes as he slept, and spoke to him. "Son of Darius, it is clear, then, that you have given up this expedition before the assembly of the Persians, and that you have paid no attention to my words, as though you had heard them from no one at all. Now be well assured of this. If you do not set out on your march at once, this will be the result for you. Just as in a short time you became great and mighty, so also you will quickly be brought low again." Xerxes, greatly disturbed by fear of the vision, sprang up from his bed and sent a messenger to summon Artabanus. When Artabanus came, Xerxes spoke to him. "Artabanus, at first I was not discreet when I spoke foolish words to you in return for your good counsel. But before long I changed my mind and understood that I ought to do the things you advised me to do. Yet I am not able to do them, although I wish to. For now, after I have turned around and changed my mind, a dream keeps coming to me and by no means approves of my doing so, and just now it left me with an actual threat. If therefore it is God who sends this dream, and if it is his full will and pleasure that an army should go against Hellas, then this same dream will also fly to you and lay on you the same command it has laid on me. It occurs to me that this might happen if you take all my clothing and put it on, then sit on my throne, and after that lie down to sleep in my bed." Xerxes spoke to him in this way. At first Artabanus was unwilling to obey the command, because he did not think himself worthy to sit on the royal throne. But at last, when he was urged further, he did what he was commanded to do after first speaking these words. "In my judgment, O king, it is equally good for a man either to have wisdom himself, or to be willing to follow the counsel of one who speaks well. You have attained both of these good things, but you are led into error by the communications of evil men, just as they say that the sea, which is the most useful of all things to men, is prevented by blasts of wind falling upon it from acting according to its own nature. When you spoke ill of me, I was not so much stung by pain at that as by this, when two opinions had been laid before the Persians, one tending to increase wanton insolence, and the other tending to check it, and saying that it is a bad thing to teach the soul always to strive for more than it presently possesses, you chose the one that was more dangerous both for yourself and for the Persians. And now, after you have turned to the better counsel, you say that when you are inclined to abandon the expedition against the Hellenes, a dream sent by some god haunts you and forbids you to give up your undertaking. But here too, my son, You are mistaken, for this is not from the deity. The dreams that come roaming to men in sleep are of the nature I shall explain to you, since I am many years older than you. The visions of dreams are usually such things as have hovered around us in the form of what we were thinking about during the day, and in the days just past we have been very much occupied with this campaign. If, however, after all this is not the sort of thing I interpret it to be, but something that has to do with God, then you have summed up the matter in what you have said. Let it appear to me also, as you say, just as it has appeared to you, and give me commands. But if it wishes to appear to me at all, it is not any more bound to appear to me if I have your garments on me than if I have my own, nor any more if I rest in your bed than if I am in my own. Surely this thing, whatever it may be, which appears to you in your sleep, is not so foolish that when it sees me it will suppose I am you, judging so because the garments are yours. What we must now find out is this, whether it will hold me of no account, and will not think fit to appear to me, whether I have my own garments or yours, but will continue still to haunt you. If it truly haunts you continually, then I myself also will be inclined to say that it is from the deity. But if you have resolved that this shall be done, and it is impossible to turn aside your resolution, and I must sleep in your bed, then let it appear to me also when I have done these things. Until then I shall hold to the opinion I now have. Having spoken in this way, Artabanus did what he was commanded, expecting to prove that Xerxes was speaking foolishly. He put on the garments of Xerxes and sat on the royal throne, and afterward went to bed. When he had fallen asleep, the same dream came to him that had been coming to Xerxes. It stood over Artabanus and said, "Are you indeed the one who tries to dissuade Xerxes from marching against Hellas, pretending that you care for him? Yet neither in the future nor now in the present shall you escape unpunished for trying to turn aside what is destined to happen. As for Xerxes, what he must suffer if he disobeys has already been shown to the man himself." So it seemed to Artabanus that the dream threatened him, and at the same time was just about to burn out his eyes with hot irons. With a loud cry he sprang up from the bed, sat down beside Xerxes, and related the vision of the dream to him from beginning to end. Then he spoke to him. "O king, I have seen before now many great things brought to ruin by lesser things, and for that reason I urged you not to yield in everything to the impulse of your youth. I knew that it was evil to desire many things. I remembered, on the one hand, the march of Cyrus against the Massagete, and what fortune it had, and also the march of Cambyses against the Ethiopians. I myself also took part with Darius in the campaign against the Scythians. Knowing these things, I held the opinion that you were to be envied above all men so long as you kept still. But since a divine impulse has come, and since, as it seems, a destruction sent from heaven is taking hold of the Hellenes, I myself am changed, and I reverse my opinions. So declare to the Persians the message sent to you from God, and bid them follow the commands you first gave about the preparations to be made. Do your utmost so that nothing on your side is lacking, since God is delivering the matter into your hands." After these things had been said, both men were filled with confidence by the vision. As soon as day came, Xerxes communicated the matter to the Persians, and Artabanus, who before had been the only man to come forward and dissuade him, now came forward to urge the plan on. When Xerxes was thus eager to make the expedition, a third vision came to him afterward in his sleep. When the Magians heard it, they explained that it referred to dominion over the whole earth and meant that all men would be subject to him. The vision was this: Xerxes thought he had been crowned with a wreath of olive branch, and that shoots growing from the olive tree covered the whole earth. After that, the wreath that had been placed around his head disappeared. When the Magians had interpreted the vision in this way, every one of the Persians who had been assembled immediately departed to his own province and was eager by every means to carry out the commands, each man desiring to receive for himself the gifts that had been proposed. In this way Xerxes gathered his army together, searching every region of the continent. For 4 full years after the conquest of Egypt he prepared the army and the things useful for the army, and in the course of the 5th year he began his campaign with a host of vast multitude. Of all the armies of which we have knowledge, this proved to be by far the greatest. The army led by Darius against the Scythians seems nothing compared with it, nor does the Scythian host, when the Scythians pursued the Cimmerians, invaded the Median land, and subdued and occupied nearly all the upper parts of Asia, an invasion for which Darius afterward attempted to take revenge. Nor does the army led by the sons of Atreus to Ilion, judging by what is reported of their expedition, nor that of the Mysians and Teucrians before the Trojan War, who crossed into Europe by the Bosphorus and not only subdued all the Thracians, but also came down as far as the Ionian Sea and marched southward to the river Peneios. All these expeditions put together, with any others added to them, if there are any, are not equal to this one alone. For what nation did Xerxes not lead out of Asia against Hellas? What water was not exhausted by being drunk by his host, except only the great rivers? Some nations supplied ships, others were appointed to serve in the land army. To some it was assigned to furnish cavalry, to others vessels to carry horses, while they also served in the expedition themselves. Others were ordered to furnish warships for the bridges, and others again ships with provisions. First of all, since the former fleet had suffered disaster while sailing around Athos, preparations concerning Athos had been under way for about 3 years. Triremes lay at anchor at Elaeus in the Chersonese, and from there as their starting point men of all nations belonging to the army worked at digging, compelled by the lash. The men went to the work regularly in succession, and those who lived around Athos also worked at the digging. Huber's son of Megabazos and Artakias son of Artaios, both Persians, were set over the work. Athos is a great and famous mountain, running down to the sea, and inhabited by men. Where the mountain ends on the mainland side, the place is like a peninsula with an isthmus about 12 furlongs across. Here the land is level, or else made up of hills of no great size, extending from the Sea of the Acanthians to the sea off Toron. On this isthmus, where Athos ends, stands a Hellenic city called Seine. There are also other cities beyond Seine and within the peninsula of Athos, all of which at this time the Persian had resolved to make cities of an island and no longer of the mainland: Dion, Olophyxos, Acrothun, Thissos, and Cleonai. These are the cities that occupy Athos. The digging was carried out as follows, after the country had been divided among the barbarians by nations for the work. At the city of Seine they drew a straight line across the isthmus. When the channel became deep, those who stood lowest dug, while others handed the earth that had been dug out to men standing above them, as though on steps. These passed it on again to others when they received it, until they came to those highest up, and these carried it away and threw it out. For all except the Phoenicians, the steep sides of the excavation collapsed and doubled their labor, for they tried to make the opening at the top and the opening at the bottom the same width, and something of that kind was likely to happen as they worked. The Phoenicians, who are generally skilled in their works, showed ability in this work also. When the portion that fell to them by lot had been assigned, they began to dig by making the opening of the excavation at the top twice as wide as the channel itself was meant to be. As the work went forward, they kept narrowing the width, so that when they came to the bottom, their work was of equal width with that of the others. There is a meadow there, where a market and a place for buying and selling were made for them, and great quantities of grain regularly came to them from Asia, already ground. As I judged the matter, Xerxes ordered this work to be dug because he was moved by a love of magnificence, by a desire to display his power, and by a wish to leave a memorial behind him. They could have drawn the ships across the isthmus without any great labor, but he ordered them to dig a channel for the sea so wide that 2 triremes could be rowed through it side by side. The same men who had been assigned to the digging were also assigned to make a bridge over the river Strymon, yoking its banks together. These were the things Xerxes was having done. Meanwhile, he also caused ropes to be prepared for the bridges, made of papyrus and of white flax, and he assigned this work to the Phoenicians and Egyptians. He was also making preparations to store provisions for his army along the road, so that neither the army itself nor the baggage animals would suffer from shortage as they marched against Hellas. Accordingly, after he had learned by inquiry about the various places, he ordered stores to be made wherever it was most convenient, with supplies carried to different points by merchant ships and ferry boats from all the countries of Asia. So they carried the greater part of the corn to the place in Thrace called Leucacti, while others carried stores to Tiridates of the Perinthians, others to Doriscos, others to Ion on the Strymon, and others to Macedonia, the work being divided among them.
And there we will pause, with the whole of Asia in arms and the canal at Athos finished, a monument, Herodotus says, to nothing but Persian pride. Next time, in part 36, the great host marches to the Hellespont. Xerxes bridges the strait itself with a road of ships, and when the first bridge is torn apart by a storm, he has the sea whipped and branded for its insolence. Mind the footnotes, and beware the folly.